My name is Dan Meyer. I'm a math educator for 6 years, and now I'm a graduate student at Stanford University pursuing a doctoral degree in math education. I love working with students, and currently I want to work with more teachers than students, and I like to develop curriculum also. I always loved math as a student when I was in my secondary education, loved it, felt good at it, and then went to college, university, and then had the experience of just being in one classroom for 1 hour every 3 days, let's say. And just the experience of tutoring students, watching them go from lack of comprehension to comprehension was very addicting for me. I really enjoyed that. I felt good at it, and what kept me going as a teacher was the fact that I learned so much math when I started teaching. I don't know if you or your fellow teachers have had this same experience, but I didn't realize how little I knew about algebra or arithmetic until I started trying to teach that over a year to students. And I need a job that has me learning every day, and that was the kind of job I enjoyed. Currently I'm trying to get a doctorate, which I'm sure we have equivalents in both of our countries. A very long paper, long study, so that's my largest project now. I have really enjoyed working with teachers in workshop settings, in speeches, and I love creating communities of educators online. So those are kind of my 3 areas I work on right now: graduate school, online community, and then workshops around curriculum development. I think we see all over and all the time that community is so important for math educators. That's why you're at your conference now, why I'm at my conference now, why you've come across an ocean for community's sake, to exchange ideas, to challenge each other, to criticize each other in constructive ways. And for me, when I was a new teacher, I worked in a department with teachers who were much older than me. Good teachers, but they had different concerns and different questions. And so I started asking my questions on the internet and created a community around myself that edified me, that encouraged me, that critiqued me, and everything I needed to grow as an educator. Yes, I'm sure if you read my blog, you might get the impression that every single day we're doing some large video-based multimedia modeling project, and that just isn't the case. Those are the fun things I like to share, but the fact is we have days where we have to do practice, we have to do projects, assessments, review, all those sort of things happen in my classes. But what's important throughout all these classes is an emphasis on students doing the math and me doing as little of the thinking as possible for them, helping them certainly, but not taking that away from them. And an emphasis on student creativity, that students are creating ideas every day, no matter what form that takes. 3-act structure is a structure that makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe not every teacher, but it works very well for me, and I've shared it with other people. And that's this: the first act of a task in modeling has some kind of visual stimulus. Not very heavy on words, not English, not Spanish. The students who are low literacy aren't excluded from this part. And it creates this question in the student's head. They're watching something and feeling a question is the ideal. And then from there, the question should be guessable. This is all Act 1. Act 1 is me trying to bring every student into the problem, very low threat level, low bar for entering the problem. Then Act 2, we go into the part where we get students the tools, information, and resources to solve that problem, to answer their own question. So the student has a question, for instance, they're watching a water tank fill up very slowly. And they do this and they wonder, how long will it take? So that's their Act 1. In Act 2, they have to know information about the water tank. They need mathematical tools like volume and prisms and vocabulary. And they need resources like a teacher, for instance, to help them understand all this, a calculator. So we gather all those resources, tools, and information in Act 2. It's important not to do that before the students have some kind of question. Oftentimes math problems will give you all this info, all these tools before the student knows why. And then in Act 3, after all that work, the student has solved the answer, has an answer. It'll take 8.1 minutes to fill up the water tank. And then the student wants to know, am I right? Is that correct? Does math work in the world? And oftentimes we turn to the back of the book in the US here, the answer's in the back of the book. it's not very satisfying. So instead, I show the entire water tank filling up in fast, sped up motion, and they see 8.1 minutes. It's a very exciting feeling for them. That's the 3 acts in many more than 140 characters. The 3 acts in 140 characters would say something like perplexing questions, visual stimuli, information after the question, and big visual payoff, big visual answer. The 3-act structure came about because number one, I wanted to make movies as a kid. This is embarrassing to admit, but I wanted to be a film director, and movies have 3 acts. And this is kind of the hero's journey in a movie, is through 3 acts. They encounter this obstacle, and then they get tools to overcome the obstacle, and there's an end to the movie when the good guy wins. But really the other part is that I use math a lot as in my life to make my life more interesting and more profitable. I have used math, and when I use math, that process doesn't look like how the textbook presents that in the US. It looks very different, and students feel it differently. When I use math in my life, I'm exhilarated and empowered and excited, and it's different for students in textbooks. So the 3-act structure is more true to how I myself use math in everyday life. I'm inspired by the world around me, and what I try to do is keep myself in a very questioning mindset where I'm always wondering questions and observing my surroundings and taking photos and video of things I see around me. It's a discipline no different than exercising or running to stay in shape. I have to ask lots of questions about my world to be able to create 3-act math tasks. I get feedback. I'll say this, that people are in our profession in the US, teachers are much more forthcoming with positive feedback than critical feedback. It's hard for me to find critical feedback. I know it's out there. I know people struggle with this. I've talked to them occasionally. There's a lot of positive feedback out there. Students enjoy the visuals. They do not enjoy reading about some visual thing. That's not the same as how we experience mathematical inquiry in our own lives. But it is difficult for some teachers. Especially if you've taught for decades with a certain kind of textbook task, you get very accustomed to that task. The curriculum that we teach with changes us. It changes us in some powerful ways, either for good or for bad. And moving away from that can be a very serious challenge for some teachers. This is definitely not a finished project. I feel like I have this structure that works for me and other people, but what I'm most excited about now is people like you who I haven't met until now in Spain, where there's different things, different perplexing, interesting questions to ask that from my small town in California I don't know about, and I'm excited about all of us collaborating around one website, and you sharing interesting math questions about Moorish artwork or whatever, and I'll share my own things from California, and our students will all benefit from that. They'll become more culturally aware in addition to being more mathematically proficient. That would be my dream, that you and I can share our work. I think I said it's a great moment to be a math teacher. At least I feel it's a great moment to be a math teacher, because the technology to engage students in real-world inquiry out there has never been cheaper or more ubiquitous. It's not free by any means. There are still issues around unequal access to technology, but the fact that my phone in my pocket at all times can take video and pictures of interesting things I see, and I have a laptop that stores them, and every classroom I've been in has a digital projector now to show them to students. That's very powerful to me, and I don't like to think about the kind of teacher I would have had to been had I come along and started teaching 20 years earlier without this technology. It would have been a very different experience for me. For a number of reasons, but I think primarily we enjoy being puzzled. The human creatures enjoy the process of experiencing a question, like a moment of and then resolving that, like getting out of that. Piaget called it a cognitive conflict. It's a term I like. Like you have a conflict, a war in your head, and then math can help you resolve that war. And I think that process plays out with both 3-act real-world math tasks where you have a question about the world, but also questions about pure numbers, X's and Y's, no real-world anything. You can still feel that question in your head and you want to resolve that. It's fairly clear to me that before too long we will have digital devices in every student's hands in the US and the world. It may be decades from now, but you can look and see if this is happening. It's starting to happen. And I'm excited about these devices, and I'm fearful of them. They may just recreate the same experience students have had of reading, and doing exercises, but I'm very excited about social mathematics where I have a device here, you have a device there, and that experience where your work and my work combine makes for some very strong mathematical learning. I'm excited about that. Like an example, for instance, is I ask you for 2 numbers that add up to 5, and you tell me 2 and 3. And over here on mine, I do the same thing. I write 1 and 4, and then our 2 suggestions combine, and up there on the wall, we see these 2 dots, one at 1, 4, one at 2, 3, and everybody's dots combine, and slowly we see a line coming into view, which is such a nice way, an intuitive way of developing the concept of linearity, whereas before I might be reduced to just lecturing about it or something like that. There's a lot of possibility. There's a lot of risk, but a lot of possibility. I'm not sure how math is perceived in Spain, but math is perceived here perhaps similarly, that it's the province of only certain very smart, students who can calculate very quickly, who memorize multiplication tables and formulas and can calculate them fast. We have a very narrow definition of what it means to be good at mathematics. And what we know is that mathematics encompasses so many more skills. Being able to ask good questions, identify variables that are important, create an argument and defend it and critique someone else's, being able to guess well with number sense. And we need to expand the definition of good at mathematics to include more students than just these narrow particular types. And we can do that with good tasks that emphasize things like intuition, arguments, creativity, all of that. This is not the only possible answer, but I'll say this. I would encourage math teachers everywhere to stay connected to what they love about maths themselves. It's very possible becoming a teacher for a long while with administration, principals, bosses, the state, imposing all these requirements. It's very easy to lose sight of what you love about doing math. And the more you keep in touch with what you love about doing math, the better the experience will be for your students. You'll start to notice that, wait, I love this part of mathematics and it's not coming through to my students. And you'll make changes so that it does. And the only way that happens is if you don't let the system, your textbooks, everything else beat you down and force you to conform to their model. Stay true to your own model of what's so lovable about mathematics. There's so many math tasks that I love. I'll just share the one that currently is in my head when I wake up, when I go to sleep. The one that I see right now is this. In the US, we when cars go too fast, we give them citations and tickets and fines and that sort of thing. And it's interesting to me that sometimes in the United States, we catch them with airplanes. We catch the speeding cars, the illegally speeding cars with airplanes. And that's, your brow is furrowed now, and as is mine. It's like, wait, how do they do that? And the fact is that they watch a certain markings on the road, say 1/2 mile, and they time it, and they compute the speed the car is going from up there in the air, and they tell a car down here, go arrest that person, they're going too fast. And I love the mathematics there, and what I want to do is I want to create some kind of video that just shows a car going too fast, perhaps, and have students think about how would you capture that car? How would you calculate its speed from way up here? I want the students to do the math the person in the airplane is doing. Not the best task I've ever thought of or enjoyed, but the one that currently is keeping me up at night.